Macmillan Audio presents Barsk, The Elephant's Graveyard by Lawrence M. Schoen. Read for you by J.G. Hertzler.
Chapter 1. A Death Detoured. Ruzel traveled to meet his death. The current had carried him away from his home island as if it understood his purpose. He lost sight of the archipelago before dusk, as much a function of the falling rain as the southerly wind that pushed him onward. In the days since, the sun had risen and set unseen, a slightly brighter spot that eased itself across the overcast sky. Nor had it cleared at night to permit a glimpse of the heavens. The clouds changed color as the rain ebbed and flowed, and the wind drove him across the water of its own accord toward an unvisited destination. Ruzel didn't care. He had no need to hurry. He had felt it coming on all season. His every perception called out to him. Less clairaudience than common sense. It was part of the way of things. One felt the change in pressure that signaled the nearness of a lull in a storm. One smelled the sweetness of kettle long before the berries actually ripened, so as not to miss their brief span for picking. And one knew when it was time to die. Ruzel could no more fail to recognize his coming death than he could be surprised by a pause in the rain or sour berries. The certainty came to him one morning. He'd never been the type to awaken easily, always struggling to cross that daily border between slumber and the responsibilities of the wide-awake world. But that day he had opened his eyes and known. Death had announced itself, named a time and place, and left him instantly alert. Ruzel had risen and gone about his day with a wistful smile, a bit sad that his time was ending, but also relieved to know for sure. That knowledge signaled the start of the final rite of passage for every Fant. His assistant had seen the change in him at the workshop that day, acknowledging it with a simple question. "You know?" Ruzel had smiled. "I do. The last lesson I need to learn. No sadness from you, Yeft. It's long overdue. Besides, I know you've wanted my tools since the day you ended your apprenticeship." The younger Fant ignored the barb and instead asked, "Is there anything I can do to help? Do you have enough time for everything?" Ruzel had been thinking it through since breakfast. Time enough to complete the game board and pieces he'd promised to his elder daughter's husband after drinking too much beer on the night of their bonding. Time enough to finish the lintel for the great window in his son's new home. And time also to build a stout raft and gather together the supplies he would need for the voyage. He had no goodbyes to say. Yeft had seen the knowledge on his face, as much because they'd worked side by side for 30 years as because it had been so fresh. The rest of his loved ones would realize what had happened after his death. None would come seeking him. Until the day they each woke to their own invitations, they wouldn't even know where to look. He'd been on the open water for 5 days, seated comfortably enough at the front end of a raft, his back against the short mast that held only sail. A tarpaulin covered a jumbled pile that occupied most of the other 2/3. Beneath it lay jugs of fresh water and beer to quench his thirst, assorted fresh fruit to enjoy before it spoiled, and dried fruit for after if the wind died or the current slowed or delayed his journey. There was grain and salt for making cold porridge, and an assortment of succulent leaves as much for dessert as for late-night snacking. Ruzel had also packed a scattering of
Sample complete. Ready to continue?